Hello everyone, this is Vikram and welcome to my channel. In this video, we'll see how to set up Kubernetes cluster using Minikube on DigitalOcean cloud. So we'll also be seeing how to use DigitalOcean Droplets to install Minikube. So before proceeding further, so let's create an account in DigitalOcean. So I'm not going to cover how to create an account. So this will be a small presentation. So once you go to digitalocean.com, so this is the landing page. So you can explore the various products and solutions offered by DigitalOcean from this page. And if you want to sign up with Google, you can just click on this button, or else you can sign up with the email. So once you click on sign up with email, so again it will open one more page. From here you have to click on sign up with email, or if you already have Google or GitHub account, so you can click on any of these buttons. So once you click on sign up with email, so this is the form that you need to fill. So you need to fill out your email address, full name and password. So once everything is entered, so you need to verify your identity by entering your credit card or debit card details. So I checked with debit card, it's working, but the only thing is your debit card should be enabled for international transactions, and DigitalOcean is going to deduct $5 for verification. And in case of Indian currency, it would be around 380 rupees. And I got the refund immediately once I made the payment. So once you add your payment details and your billing address, so your DigitalOcean account will be created. So you'll also receive an email once it is activated. So once it is activated, we need to click on explore our control panel. As you see, DigitalOcean offers $100 of free credit to try any of its services. And once you have or in this page, you can just click on explore our control panel to open the DigitalOcean main control panel. So this is the first page that you are going to see in the control panel. I already have one project called first project, but in your case you won't be seeing it. So we'll start with creating the DigitalOcean Droplet, which is a similar service in AWS called AWS EC2, but in DigitalOcean they are called Droplets. So in order to install Minikube on DigitalOcean, so I already have a README file which is under Kubernetes and cluster setup folder. So you can refer this complete documentation. So we have certain system requirements, that is we need at least 2 GB of RAM, 2 vCPUs, 20 GB of free disk space, and the main important thing is we need to have Docker install, and we need to also install some external dependencies like the curl, wget, https cert, cs certs and contract. Basically this package is needed for your Minikube to work properly. And after that we'll be adding the official Docker repository, and before adding we'll be importing the repository key, and then we'll be installing Docker. And after Docker is installed, in order to talk to the Kubernetes cluster, we need kubectl utility. So we'll be installing kubectl utility as well, and this is the official link for reference. And once everything is done, we are going to download the Minikube binary, and using Minikube start --VM driver is equal to none, we'll start the Minikube cluster. Since we are already using VM, so we have to set the VM driver to none. And then in order to stop the Minikube cluster, we need to use Minikube stop. And by default Minikube starts with minimum vCPUs and memory, but if you want to set higher resources, you can use Minikube config set CPUs and memory before running the Minikube start. So now let's see how to create DigitalOcean Droplet. So as you see, we have Droplet section over here. So once you click on the Droplet, so the Droplet creation page will open. So I'll click on create Droplet. So here I'll be selecting Ubuntu 21 from the drop down, and for the plan I'll be using a shared vCPU. So I'm selecting the basic, and regular with SSD is the disk type. So I'll be selecting 2 GB and 2 CPUs. So we'll be charged $15 per month, but since we already have $100 credit, so we can use this. And we need to, if you want any block storage, so you can add block storage also here. And I'm selecting the default data center region, so I'm not selecting anything. So VPC also I'm setting it to default. And in case of authentication, there are two ways. So you can log in through the password, which is not which is less secure, or else you can use authentication in the form of SSH keys. So in the form of SSH keys, so we have to generate a public and private key pair, and we have to add a public key into the Droplet, that means into the DigitalOcean. So what we are going to do is, first we are going to add an SSH key. So I already have one SSH key, but I'll show you how to generate one. So click on new SSH key, and here you have to enter your public key. But before entering your public key, you have to run a command to generate both public and private key files in your local machine. So if you run SSH keys in your terminal, so it is going to create one SSH key value pair. sorry, SSH public and private keys. So after running this command, just press enter. So I already have SSH keys generated. So it is in my home directory under .ssh folder. So we'll have two files. So if I switch to another profile, like if you have git bash, your Linux commands will work. So I'm just doing ls, and then I'll be listing out the contents inside my home directory under .ssh folder. So there will be two files. One is the id_rsa, which is a private key, and id_rsa.pub, which is your public key. So what we have to do, we have to cat on your public key and then copy into the DigitalOcean. So I'm just doing id_rsa.pub, and this is your public key that you are going to copy. So I'm just copying this, and I'll go to the adding SSH key option. So I'll add the SSH key. So name, I can just, as an identifier, I can give any name and then add SSH. So this SSH key is already used. So if you don't have, so you have to use it. Since I already have, so I don't have to enter it again. So once you enter, just click on add SSH key. In my case, it is already there and it is selected. And now here, if you want additional options like enable backup, so you can do it, but you'll be charged $3. And if you want to enable monitoring, you can just select the monitoring. And if you want the IPv6 networking, so you can also enable it for free. By default, it runs on IPv4. And user data, so this user data are the initial scripts that you wanted to run when your VM, which is called as a Droplet, first boots up. So this is similar to your EC2 user data, the similar kind of option we have in the AWS. So now select how many instances you need. So I need only one Droplet because this is a single node cluster. And as a host name, I'm just going to select as k8_master. And tags, you can just give any tag, like I'm just using k8 as the tag. And every Droplet belongs to a project. So when you're first creating, so this is the first this is the project name that you are going to be assigned. So if you want, you can also modify it in this option. And now I'll just go ahead and create the Droplet. So in the first project, you can see all the resources that you create under the first project appears here. So Droplet is created. So if you want more information, you can click on this Droplet to get the IPv4 address. And then floating IP, it is similar to a static IP, but we don't want to enable it now because it is again chargeable. So if DigitalOcean also has inbuilt console where you can SSH into the instances, but we'll be doing it from the command prompt. So these are the various options available. So I'll just take the IP address, go to the terminal, and the default user is root. So I have to do SSH root at the rate of the IP address. So this is automatically going to take this private key which is there in your machines, which is there in your home directory. So first I have to enter yes, and then I'm logged into my Droplet. So first what I'll do is I'll switch to root user using sudo su, and I already have all the commands listed down here. So first let's do apt update -y and then install all the dependencies needed. So this is the first command that we are going to run. So let's try to run again. So I'm going to copy the other command which is going to install all the dependencies like curl, contract, cserts, etc. And then I have to import the Docker official repository key, and at the same time I'm going to add the repository into my apt sources list, and inside this file I'm going to add the official Docker repository and then use apt update. So I'm going to run all the three commands at once. So apt update -y to update the repository, and then use apt install docker ce, which is a community edition, and docker cli containerd. So I'm going to install all three at once. So once these are installed, I'm just going to see Docker version. So Docker 20 is installed. At the same time, if you want to see the Docker process, use systemctl status Docker to get the status of the Docker. So by default, it is in the running state. And then once Docker is installed, I'm going to install kubectl. So you have to refer this link. So what I'm doing is I'm just downloading the kubectl utility under bin Linux. and then I'm going to download in the current directory itself, and then I'm going to move it into bin kubectl, and I'm going to give it an executable permission so that I can execute the command. So I'm just going to paste all the commands over here and then run. If you want to know if kubectl is installed properly or not, so just use kubectl -- version. So this is going to, sorry, I think it is kubectl just single version, or not single version, I think it's kubectl version. So as you see, kubectl version 1.323 is installed, but here the connection to the server is refused because we don't have any active Kubernetes cluster up and running. So once kubectl is installed, we have to pull the Minikube binary, and then we have to install it and then give it the executable permission. So this we already seen in multiple sessions, so I'm just going to run them one by one. So Minikube is also installed. So if I just if I type Minikube and enter, so I'm able to get the options. That means Minikube is also installed. And now in order to start the cluster, we should use Minikube start -- driver is equal to none. But Minikube has a lot of other options as well. That means if you want to start with certain number of CPUs and RAM, so you can also do this. So I'm just doing Minikube -- help, but this help section is for start. So I'm just going to use Minikube start -- help. So here if you see, there are a lot of options available, and somewhere here you'll find CPUs is equal to 2. So this is one option to enable certain number of CPUs, and also we'll have -- memory to set the default RAM size. So this is -- memory, but I'm not going to set any of them because this is just a test cluster. All I'm going to do is I'm going to start it with the default resources. Minikube start -- driver is equal to none. So Minikube is going to pull all the Docker container images needed to bootstrap the cluster, and it is going to configure the kubectl with the default config file. So now kubectl is configured to talk to the Minikube cluster on default namespace, and the default kubeconfig file is located here. But if you want to run it with any other user, so you have to move it to that user's home directory, and then you have to change the ownership to that username. So let's see the Minikube status by running Minikube status. So Minikube is up and running. So now if you do kubectl version, you're going to get the server version as well. Server version is also 1.23. And also if you want to get the cluster info, just run kubectl cluster -info. This is going to show you the API server URL, the way the code DNS is running, etc. And now let's also run a test pod. So we are going to use kubectl run to run a pod with this name, and this is the image, and I'm going to export this is a container port that I'm going to expose. So I'm going to run this command. So the pod is created. So let's just verify using kubectl get pod. So container is in the creating state. So let's also expose it using the node port. So using kubectl expose pod, the name of the pod and the type of the service, so which is a node port service. So now let's see both kubectl get PO and SVC to get the status of pod and service. So the Minikube service is exposed as node port on port 30618. So I'm going to take the DigitalOcean's VM IP. So this is the IP, and then let's enter the port number, which is basically 30618. So if you see, I have the response coming from the pod. So if I enter any context, let's say that /login, so I'm going to get the path and the request URI, and everything is properly working now. And also in Minikube you'll have a lot of add-ons. So if I just use Minikube add-ons list, so I'm going to get all the add-ons that are supported by default by Minikube. So a lot of them are disabled by default. You can enable Ingress, you can also enable Istio, Metal LB, which is an on-prem load balancer service. So these are all things that can be enabled. Now let's see how to delete this droplet. So once you're in the droplet information page, I can just go to all the droplets once, and then in the more section I can add a domain, access a console, resize it to increase the RAM and CPU, enable backups, edit tags, and destroy it. So I'll be just clicking on destroy, and then destroy this droplet, and just enter the name of the droplet, which is k8-master, and this droplet is deleted. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.